Hello everyone, it's Sandra here, and we are looking in on Eat My Shorts after a week of not looking in at all after I gave these worms some of those leaves that had been sitting in a rain bucket. So let's take a look and see how they got on with it. I see a bigger roly-poly and a little one. There's worms on the surface there. So let's just see how the worms like those leaves. Can't resist, I'm going for the leaves. Material's lovely and moist. Still got an avocado. Look at that. Still an avocado party going on. This is like 3 weeks later. They're still working away at that avocado. I've given them food that they can eat in the meantime because I've made it known that I think they can only eat the surface layer of the avocado as the microbes get into it. So that meant I was giving them regular feedings as well. So here's all these leaf stems that I added. And that's always a risk with a bin that, you know, you're adding leaves, you know, you're going to get leaf stems that are going to hang around. You might get critters. Here's the other half avocado. Not as much interest with this one, but you know, that's fabric. That wasn't avocado in there. So we'll see why the worms weren't interested in that one anymore. Maybe it's not rotting anymore. It was being preserved by the bin somehow. Anyway, do you see any food? I don't see any food. Those avocados obviously are not sustaining this number of worms. I don't actually see, other than the stems, I don't see a lot of the leaves. These are big leaf maples. These are bigger than my hand, these maple leaves, when they went in here. And I see like mere shreds of the leaves themselves. In fact, you can see the ragged edges of the leaf there that has already decomposed. These leaves, you know, I just picked them up from my patio and I put them in a bucket and I just let rainwater fall on and just left them out there for like 3-4 weeks. And so the leaves were in a state of decomposition already. And yeah, they've just dissolved, leaving their leaf stems, but nothing else. Okay, so now let's check this other end of the bin. I'm going to switch hands and we'll just check this end. Moisture is great in that it's enough but not too much. One way I check for moisture is are you getting like a lot of compression on the bottom? This is a deep bin, you can tell by my arm reaching in. And the bedding builds up quite deep in these bins. It's deceptive. When you have a shallow tray, you're kind of got, you know, guardrails on getting the bedding too deep because it'll spill over when you do something like this. When you've got a big deep bin like this, the bedding just keeps getting deeper and deeper. That's why I have to harvest these things so frequently, do my half harvests, because you know, the bedding builds up and all of a sudden you get compression down the bottom. That hasn't started happening. If anything, I would say, well, marginally dry, the bedding. So that's a leaf, so I'm going to put it over on the leaf side. Marginally on the dry side, the bedding, which, you know, affects reproduction. Worms preferred a little moist for reproduction. Cocoons preferred a little moist for hatching, but it's moist enough. I see no evidence that the worms are distressed at all. My hand is feeling, you know, slight moisture on the fingers as I'm going through. I'm not going to do a squeeze test. Too many worms. So this is the bin that I did the half harvest, and I'll put the number of days on the screen. And so I don't want to mess with this moisture level because I think I will be sifting out some of this material again, like I did with Cinderella recently. You know, you can just quickly go through and, you know, obviously any of these leaf stems are easy, big bits to find. You can quickly go through and just throw any larger bits to one end of the bin. Don't have to make a big fuss about it. And over the course of a couple feedings, what you've got is you've done a casual separation of material that will sift beautifully and give you really nice castings, and larger bit material that can stay in the bin a bit longer. So I think I've got most of the castings over to this side. And so this large bit material, I'm just going to get a piece of paper that I can turn the large bit material over onto so I don't mix it up again into this side. So hold on just a moment. The packing paper was looking a little fragile, so I decided to use this cracker box. And I very rarely put cracker boxes in my worm bins, or, I mean, quite frankly, we don't get a lot of crackers, but we did over Christmas. So I have a couple cracker boxes in my bins. And so I'm using them as sort of blackout on the top that will not decompose as quickly as the packing paper. The packing paper is too fragile for me to do this. A grocery bag would have worked. I'm finding castings doing this, but that's okay. That's okay. So I'll just spread out once more this old elastic that's hanging around in here, mostly just as a reservoir for moisture, so that the bin doesn't dry out any more than it already is. I'm just going to save a guy that's climbed up about 8 inches. There we go. All right. Okay, now food. So this is just my regular food scraps, previously frozen: banana peels, carrot peels, avocado shells, tea leaves, along with some egg powder, eggshell powder put into it. Oh, I can smell the banana going in. So I'm just going to smear it out over that side. It's got good moisture in it. There's quite a few worms in here. They've been hungry for a week, so I'll just put that in liberally. So this food was previously frozen, but in fact, it's been thawing for 2 days, so it's probably going a bit high, and I think the worms will appreciate that. So now what I do is I just invert this piece of cardboard. Hopefully it will maintain its integrity. Just invert it over there, give it a shake. So that larger bit material now is free to cover up the feeding zone. All those leaf stems and leaf fragments that were left over. I decided not to put any carbon directly in the feeding zone, but I'm actually going to give them some new leaves right on the top. So even though I'm adding more leaf stems again, the leaves themselves are in that state of partial decay from sitting in the bucket. They've been sitting inside, so at indoor temperatures, so I'm pretty sure these leaves are going to break down just as quickly as they did before. Not these stems. In fact, this is a needle from our huge pine tree, so I'll be pulling it out of the castings, but there's some leaves to make up the carbon part of the feeding today. Spread out the castings so that meet the old feeding in with the new. So you see this side of the bin now, which is probably a good 75% now, is being readied for harvest. Won't be long now, eat my shorts, before you get another harvest. My leaves that I had soaking in the rainwater have turned out to be a great experiment. It's kind of like making bedding ahead of time. The leaves, of course, have natural microbes on them, so by just keeping them in a wet state, I've obviously shown that they will break down a lot faster. So by having the leaves collected outside and kept wet, I think what I've shown is that the microbes are active, and I've been adding then active microbes to the bin that breaking down the leaves. So Eat My Shorts is looking good. I'll just flatten out this paper, say goodbye for today. Thanks everyone for watching.